Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So this is part 3 of the lectures on Chapter 15, Monopolies. Today we're going to be talking about welfare of monopolies. So this is where we're going to pick up. We're going to talk about how monopolies affect producers and consumers, who benefits and who hurts because of that. Just the general trend, because the monopoly can charge whatever price it wants, because consumers have to pay whatever price they want. This allows monopolies to charge higher prices, which means consumers pay higher prices. In general, the producers benefit more. They have more producer surplus because they're charging higher price. And the consumers benefit less because they're paying higher price. So higher prices lead to economic profits for the monopolists, the producers, and less benefit for consumers. But this doesn't necessarily mean they're inefficient. It might just be a shift of where the surplus is going, but we'll see that sometimes there is inefficiencies and we get deadweight loss. So let's talk about surplus and monopolies. So just a refresher, the efficient solution is where total surplus is maximized. We don't care if it's going to consumers, we don't care if it's going to producers, we just want as much surplus as possible. That's as much added benefit from economic interactions. We also know the monopolist maximizes profit by finding the output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Again, that is where marginal revenue, MR, equals MC. Critical to remember this. MR equals MC. That's what we care about. Alright, so let's take a look at what this means graphically. So go ahead and move to the next slide. There's a lot going on here. I'm going to explain this bit by bit on what each piece means. So here we actually see the monopolist with a single price. So the monopolist charges a set price, and that is based on the quantity sold and what the demand is willing to pay at that quantity. So we want to look for where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and you can see this line right here is marginal revenue, and this line right here is marginal costs, and these two intersect right here. So that's our quantity. Where's the demand price? The price is right there. So the monopolist is able to sell right there at that monopoly price. So what does this mean? They sell here, but they're only paying here. We're going to get profit. However, this is not the efficient solution. The efficient solution occurs where the demand, so the benefit to consumers, the willingness to pay, is equal to marginal cost. In a typical economy, a perfectly competitive economy, this demand is the same. Marginal cost and marginal revenue are all going to meet at this point here. However, marginal revenue is not there. So the demand is at this point, I'll do this in orange, right here. So here we're going to sell this amount at this price. Now what we'll see is we don't get profit anymore because we're selling where marginal cost, at the marginal cost rather than above the marginal cost. Selling at the marginal cost, so economic profit is 0. However, all these extra people benefit right here from this extra quantity at the bottom. So we get the deadweight loss right here. That's deadweight loss. And no one gets that. We're selling here rather than out here. So we lose that value, and that surplus is going to no one. That means this is an inefficient outcome. So when a monopolist charges a single price, we have an inefficiency. I think that's good. You can skip the next slide. That was just for me to recreate it. However, sometimes we don't just charge, the monopolist doesn't just charge a single price. Sometimes we have something called price discrimination. Price discrimination is exactly what it sounds like. It's discrimination of prices. Discrimination just means differentiation. We typically have negative associations with discrimination. class-based discrimination, gender discrimination, racial discrimination. However, discrimination just really means differentiating. So price discrimination is differentiating prices. And it means that the producer, in this case a monopolist, is going to sell the good at a different price to different consumers. Now this may sound weird, but it can be both a good and a bad thing for consumers. It's definitely good for the producer because they're going to sell more at the maximum price they can. They're really going to reach that willingness to pay for each consumer. And that's what it's based on. You discriminate to the person's willingness to pay. So if you go to the next slide, a graphical comparison, and we can walk through this. So right here we have that exact same graph we had before. Now we're going to have price discrimination. So don't worry about the graph over here to the left. We're just going to focus on this one on the right. The one on the left is just for comparison's sake. Okay. So here, rather than charging a single price, the monopolist actually charges all of these prices. And it depends on which consumer they're charging. So they charge the first consumer that price, the second consumer that price, the third, the fourth, and so on. They charge the person's willingness to pay. So what happens here? They actually make the full amount of profit all the way up to those willingness to pays, those demand curves, right here. And eventually we're going to see they get even more profit. They're taking what was consumer surplus in the first graph and turning it into profit. However, we eliminate the deadweight loss because we decide we're going to discriminate our prices, and rather setting a single price right here, we're going to go all the way down to this price right here because we can still make money. So they get more economic profit. Now this is an efficient solution. All of the surplus is doled out, except it's going all to producers. So this may not be an equitable solution since the monopolist is getting everything and consumers are not getting any added benefit. Now what I will say about this is you can make an argument it's better than the previous situation over here because you have all of these extra people getting whatever good was being sold. And the next slide was just for me to recreate it. I kind of broke it down there. We're not going to do that. So what are some real world examples of monopolies or price discrimination? Sorry. It at first thought you might think that doesn't happen in the real world, but it happens all the time. It happens all around you, and as students, you actually experience this a lot. One great example is student prices. You go to a museum, you pay cheaper. You can go to a lot of different places and you get a student discount. This is a form of price discrimination because typically students don't have as much money because they're in school, they're not working, etc. Movie tickets, if you go to a matinee, it is cheaper than at night. That's because there's less demand. There's not as many people to go see movies during the day as there are at night when people aren't working or they might have more free time. Financial aid, this is an example of price discrimination that is very beneficial to consumers of education because they pay what they are able to rather than a set price. So schools determine a range of prices and they change their price based on your willingness to pay and ability to pay. So price discrimination can actually increase access to a good in some situations. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. However, it can have negative effects if the monopolist gains all of the benefit. So what are some options that, or some ways that we've tried to increase welfare in the face of monopolies and a monopolistic economy? So the big one is antitrust laws. Trust would just be a means of making a monopoly. Antitrust prevents that. And there were two big laws in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I don't remember which came first, but there's the Sherman antitrust and the Clayton antitrust. And they both prevent companies from making monopolies. So two large companies that control a market could not merge. For example, Apple and Samsung could not merge because they would be a monopolist in the cell phone market. Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint couldn't merge because they would control phone coverage. These are examples of things that would not be allowed. The exact means of determining what is a monopoly and what isn't is pretty complicated. There's a mathematical formula that the government uses. That's not something you'll need to know. but you need to control a significant portion of that specific market, a lot. So other policy options, just general regulation is another means. Antitrust is a very specific regulation. There are other regulations such as you can have a natural monopoly. You can actually publicly own a company, like water companies, or the city water is publicly owned, city garbage, things like that are publicly owned. The government owns it and runs it. You can also regulate price for a natural monopoly. So a power plant might be independent, but the government dictates this is the price you can charge, and there's no getting around that. So what are the key takeaways from this unit? First, know what a monopoly is. It is a sole seller in the market. It has significant power because they're the only one that can produce the good, and they get to determine the price. They want to maximize their profit, and where do they do that? Where marginal revenue, MR, equals marginal cost. So those are the key takeaways now. But that is not where the marginal cost equals the demand. So you can sell, the price can be higher than the marginal cost, which creates economic profit. And so in a monopoly, a monopolist can have positive economic profit in an equilibrium. And that is about it. So key terms, you want to know these. You want to know what a monopoly is, know what a natural monopoly is, know what price discrimination is, antitrust laws, barriers to entry, economies of scale, and with that, know what a diseconomy of scale is as well. And that is about everything for this unit. So you guys have a problem set to work on. Go ahead and complete those, go over them with a friend or neighbor. And please email me if you have any questions. I'll get you guys a quiz shortly. Have an excellent day, good luck, and shoot me an email if you have questions.